Hey everybody, it's the Stuff I Heard podcast. I'm your host, Josh Peak. We're on episode 119. Ready? Here we go. Hey everybody, how's everybody doing? So, I talked about the fact that I had a little vacation with my friends on the last episode, and if you guys listened to that, you got to hear plenty of Josh Treadaway and Greg. What we didn't get to have is have my buddy Rodney on. my buddy Rodney and I have been friends since we were about 12 years old. We had both moved to South Carolina when our parents had jobs that moved them here, weirdly enough. First day in 6th grade at our local Savannah Grove Elementary, I'm on the playground and this little Asian kid comes up and slaps me on the arm and goes, "Tag, you're it!" and takes off. And I was like, "Wait, what?" And I chased after him. And we played tag. We played tag a lot. And there was a like one of those square-looking jungle gym type deals. It was like a cube, and it had an extra set of bars on top that were a little tall. By today's standards, I'm sure that it would be like a huge safety violation, and the school would be fined, and they would have protesters out there talking about our children's safety is at caution, and you guys are going to kill them, and blah, 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 blah. And to be fair, if you fell off that thing at the right angle, yeah, you'd crack your neck open in a heartbeat, because the ground was just dirt, hard packed sand, dirt, nothing loose. Nowadays they put all kind of, rubberish type looking mulch on the ground, or bark, or, fluffy kind of sand that gives a bit when you step on it. And it would have been a lot safer, but back then it was like throw caution to the wind. Let's just throw this thing up here and let's make it happen, Captain. So there was a structure, and me and these group of kids decided that it would be fun to play tag on it. Now, if you can imagine a bunch of monkey-looking kids going around this thing at breakneck speed trying to avoid being tagged, whether it was being on top or on bottom, or skirting around through the outside, or darting in between these railings, we made the most of every square inch of that set of jungle gym equipment. And Rodney was a little thin dude. Rodney was quick too. He had lightning reflexes. I mean, if you tagged him, good. If you wanted to tag him, good luck. He was very, very quick. And, for some reason, he and I kind of hit it off. Not necessarily as just, like, "Hey, how are you? My name's Josh, what's your name?" "Hi, Rodney," and like we bonded. It was more like we bonded playing together. And we played together a lot. And we had some classes together and that kind of thing. And I started making friends with some other people. But Rodney was just always around. And he and I, for some reason, just kept hanging out more and more as time went on. We went to 7th grade and went to Moore Middle School. Back then, our middle school had two grade levels, 7th and 8th grade. And during that time, Rodney and I became friends more, and I had a little bit of independence. When I got to be 15, I got one of those stupid moped things. Let me back up a little bit and tell you about this moped situation. Okay, so when I was young, I really wanted a motorcycle. I mean, I wanted a motorcycle so bad I couldn't even stand it. I had one of those Evel Knievel toys that you had like a ripcord thing, and you pull the ripcord, and Evel Knievel's wheel would just and spin, and then you sit him on the ground and he'd go and take off, and you could get him to jump over stuff. And Evel Knievel was a cool toy, because I didn't even know who Evel Knievel was as far as television, because we didn't watch television that much. But I'd heard stories about Evel Knievel jumping over just streams of cars, and my uncle would talk about it, about how cool it was. So, I don't know if maybe it was Evel Knievel that got me to liking motorcycles or what, but I had a love of motorcycles. And I wanted one. I wanted one so bad. So bad. When I was a kid, my papa had bought a motorcycle, like a dirt bike kind of thing, from somebody. And I don't know who he bought it from, but he come home, he's like, "Hey man, I got you a dirt bike." I'm like, "Cool, let's go ride." So I went riding. I learned how to ride a bicycle much like I learned how to ride a motorcycle. I learned how to go forward, but I didn't know how to stop. So there's a moment on the thing where I'm riding and I go, "Wait, how do I stop this thing?" I never thought to ask. So I literally at one point lost control a little bit and went into a briar patch. And I mean, on this dirt bike, briar patch, and me, right straight into it. Just, and it scratched me all up, man, super bad. And my papa saw me go into the briar patch, ran over there and just reached in and got like my belt loop in the back of my shirt and just yanked me out of there. Of course, ripping things the other way, but got me out of there. And the bike shut itself off, and it was probably 30 minutes later the cops showed up, and come to find out that dirt bike had been stolen by somebody, and then they turned around and sold it to my papa. God bless him, he was trying. He could see the love and the joy in my heart of wanting that motorcycle. So anyway, let's fast forward a little bit. I get to where I'm about 14 years old, getting ready to turn 15, and in the state of South Carolina, it is legal, or was legal, for you to have a motorcycle license and drive a motorcycle at the age of 15. Now, if you want to drive a car, back then that was just a permit. You get a permit, you're allowed to drive between 7 a.m. and 7 p.m., but you had to have a licensed driver in the car with you for a certain amount of time, and blah, 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 blah. And there's all these real rules and crap like that. Well, I wasn't about no rules. I wanted to be a rebel. I wanted to be a cool guy. I wanted to have, you know, my hands on the handlebars of freedom. That's basically the romantic picture I put in my brain. The handlebars of freedom, baby. Maybe that's what I'll call this episode, the handlebars of freedom. Anyway, my handlebars of freedom had high hopes. I had envisioned being able to pull up as a freshman in high school when everybody else was getting their uncle's four-door LTD, full-size car, rusted out and falling apart. I envisioned in my head me being the one kid that pulled up on a motorcycle. I don't know why that appealed to me, but it did. I wanted to think, when you're young and you're a young man and you in my brain I wanted to be different. I wanted to be exceptional in some way. And I really wasn't exceptional at the time. I was just an average kid, a little overweight, matter of fact. I was nervous and when it come to talking to people. I felt uncomfortable in my own skin, but I thought motorcycle will fix everything. Yeah, that'll do it. Yeah, motorcycle. Motorcycle didn't fix everything. In fact, when I turned 15 years old, my nana and my papa bought a motorcycle from my aunt. My aunt actually had like a 1978 Honda motorcycle. I don't even know if they gave it names back then. It was just one of those straight seat looking deals with the burnt orange gas tank. Now, by today's standards, people would look at that and they go, that's a dumb looking motorcycle. By my standards, I looked at it and I thought, that's freedom, baby. That's freedom. That's cool freedom. Everybody else I know is driving station wagons that their mom drove for 10 plus years, and they got their dad's old Crown Victoria that's makes all kind of knocking noises when you press the gas pedal and sputters smoke out. And I would be the one kid with a motorcycle, the one boy, the one soon to be a man motorcycle, the one guy who is trying to impress girls who have new developed boobies into thinking, oh my goodness, look at him, he's so hot with the motorcycle. I had to have my one hook, doggone it, and I didn't have it. But they brought me this motorcycle. They bought it from my aunt and brought it up all the way from West Georgia, brought it to South Carolina, and I got off the school bus that day, and I come around and I seen it parked there, and I was like, oh, is that for me? And they were like, yes it is, happy birthday. I was like, yeah! I felt like I'd won. I felt like this is it, like this is the moment, this is where it all happens. Later I'll tell my memoirs about when I was young and I had the motorcycle. And man, it'll just be memorable, like people will be envious, and I'll even look back on it fondly and talk about my grandparents who just somehow saw through my mom's BS of safety and, oh, my little boy, and I'd be like, no, I'm not a little boy anymore. I'm wearing leather and I'm riding a motorcycle, yeah. And I start talking like this because that's how guys on motorcycles talk. They get like grin on their face, because they and all their stories revolve around them telling stories about how I went into this curve and all of a sudden I was like, all the sound effects, all that comes out of you when you're the guy with the motorcycle. Or so I thought. Here's what actually happened. I got off the school bus and I'm like, motorcycle, cool! And mom's like, whoa, slow your roll. Come in the house, we're going to have some cake and ice cream, and you're going to visit your grandparents before you go messing around with that thing. And I was like, okay, yeah, you're right. Thank you, Nana. Thank you, Papa. Appreciate the motorcycle, and I want to ride it just as soon as we get done eating some cake and ice cream. And I love my granny, my Nana and my Papa. I loved them to death. I spent a lot of time with them. And I really wanted to ride that motorcycle. So I ate cake and I ate ice cream, and I think we had hot dogs or whatever, you know, because when you're feeding a bunch of people on not much money, you feed them hot dogs. So we had hot dogs and we entertained and whatnot. And I go, okay, can I go ride it now? And they were like, sure. Well, my stepdad was a big guy. My stepdad was probably 6'3", 6'4"-ish. And he was like, you know, listen, we've been riding it all day. It's a lot of fun. His name was Dave. And Dave's like, listen, we've been riding it all day. It's a lot of fun, man. It's a cool ride. You're going to enjoy this. And I was like, all right, cool. And I hop on it and I go to crank it and nothing happens. I mean, nothing. Not the first sputter, not the first vroom, not even a vroom vroom. Nothing. Just nothing. And I was like, wait, but what happened? What happened to the motorcycle? Where's all the coolness and the, you know, Marlon Brando and the, hey baby. I mean, where'd all that go? Come to find out, they had loaded this motorcycle up and brought it all the way from West Georgia. And I could just picture my grandparents now thinking about the fact of, oh, Josh is going to dig this. This is going to be so cool, man. We're actually bringing him something his mama's going to hate. This is going to be great. This is going to be, you know, not that they were going out of their way to do something she would hate. They were more thinking about me and the fact that I would just be so happy riding this motorcycle. Well, it never occurred to anybody to actually check the oil before they went riding around on it all day long, having themselves a good old time. They burned up the motor. It had old oil. It needed to be serviced. But they blew up the motor. Now, I know Dave wasn't the only one to drive it. There's a lot of people there that drove it, or rode on it, or both. I was never given the full story, but my hopes and dreams got shattered. And I was like, but I don't get to be cool now. Like the one thing I was hanging my hat on, because I knew I didn't have the looks and I didn't have the physical ability to play sports like a lot of people did, and I was not comfortable talking to people. I couldn't just walk up to a girl and be like, hey, I like you, and I want to hang out, and like we could watch a movie together or something. I don't know. I mean, I was 15, you know, whatever. So anyway, all that happens. I'm super pissed off, but I don't want to be like, you motherfucker, you know, but I was thinking it. But anyway, Dave could see the disappointment in my heart, and he also at one time was a young man who had the same hopes and dreams and desires and also felt awkward around women when he was younger, and you know, could tell that this is a big deal for me. And he was like, I guess in a way he felt guilty too. He was like, listen, I'll make it right. I'm sorry. I'll make it right. And I was like, okay. All right. So I visited my grandparents, and God bless them, I love them, and they tried. They made a legit effort, you know. So anyway, I don't exactly know the time frame, but at some point there, shortly after, the motorcycle was loaded up and taken to a mechanic, where supposedly it was going to be looked at and possibly fixed. Well, my stepdad came home and he says, listen, I've taken it to a guy, he's looked at it, and he said that it's more trouble than it's worth. It's going to cost more to fix it than it would be just to buy another motorcycle. And I was like, aw. Now, if you put a pin in that, okay, here's where life would have been different if my dad was around. Because my dad would have been like, listen, we're going to break that motor down and rebuild it together, and I'm going to teach you how to do it. Even if I don't even know how, we're going to learn how to do it. My stepdad was not exactly mechanically inclined, and he had a toolbox with not all the tools there. He tried. Like, you know, listen, no one is ever fully prepared to be a parent. No one is ever fully prepared to have all the answers either. And, you know, my dad was going through some things then, and so he wasn't there to do this. My stepdad was going through some stuff then, and he wasn't fully prepared to do it either. We didn't have YouTube back then, so it wasn't like you could just go on the internet and be like, How do I fix a 1960? You know, we couldn't go on Amazon and order the parts. We couldn't, you know, look up some junkyard that was maybe 20 minutes down the road. We have no idea. Maybe they had a perfect engine that would have fit in it. We didn't have any of the information. So we were just basically left with the idea of a mechanic going, yeah, there's nothing I can do. So he says, listen, I'm sorry. I'm going to see what I can do. But I talked to your mom, and she is not for you having a motorcycle. And I was like, yeah, I know that, but screw her. Come on, this is me. Like, be the cool stepdad. Like, you know, help me out here. He's like, I'm trying. Let me see what I can do. I was like, okay. So I was hopeful. I was like, I really hope this turns out good. And he goes to the Honda place to look at motorcycles. And what ended up happening was he got a new motorcycle for himself, and I got a moped. Now, before you think, yay, a moped, picture a moped like a scooter, okay? Like a really neat, like a Vespa kind of scooter with a little floorboard and a kind of Italian look to it. And when you honk the horn, it goes, you know, and you can have a little extra seat back there so that your hot little girlfriend could ride on it. Because maybe you're just cruising through the Italian Alps and well, not the Alps, but you know what I mean. You're a metroing about town, and you just happen to be quite cosmopolitan with your ride. And that's what a lot of people are doing nowadays with that kind of stuff. No, this is the moped. This is the one that looked like a bicycle with pedals and a motor. Yeah. Had a little basket thing or a luggage rack thing on it. Like you're going to put luggage on this. A luggage rack thing on the back. And it was terrible. It was just terrible. I knew from experience, excuse me, that my cousin Joey had a legitimate scooter, and it was nice. It was a Honda Spree. It had a spot where you put the oil, and it had a spot where you put the gas, and it went about 35 miles an hour, and it was really easy to use, and it was dependable, and it had electric start. All you had to do was hit the little button, and you're off. Easy, right? This piece of crap that I got had pedals where you mix your gas and your oil together in a special can, and then you put it in there, but then you have to pedal it at a certain frequency in order to hit the button and then switch it over from pedaling to then running. And then once you got it running, you might do 35, maybe. You kind of went slow enough so that bugs could see you coming, and they'd kind of sidestep you. They'd be like, "Oh, do you see that? That dork on that little moped almost ran into me." Wow. I mean, listen, I got older, and at some point I did get a motorcycle, and bugs will whack you when you actually go up speed, and they hurt. So I don't know, maybe they were doing me a favor. But anyway, I had a moped. Now, what do you do if you have a moped? Well, you got to ride it, right? Because otherwise your parents are looking at you going, well, we were going to get him a motorcycle, but look, he didn't even ride the moped. So I was like, screw this, I'm riding the moped. Now, to be fair, the moped was better than a bicycle because I could give it some gas and down the road. I mean, on the road. That's a big step for someone who's 15 years old, especially when I think about my knuckleheads when they got to be 15 years old. There's no way I would have let them do what they let me do. But now we were different kids. We were latchkey kids. We were left alone a lot. We were known for riding our bikes all day long, every day, until it was too dark to see, and your parents would be like, where are they? They're never coming home. And then you'd come in and be like, hey, what's up? Where have you been? Oh, I'm riding my bike playing with my friends. Okay. That's our generation. Like, our generation was out just roaming the streets at random, trying to find stuff to do, because we were told to get out of the house. So we stayed out of the house. Well, the moped did allow me some freedom, and I thought, I gotta make some friends with people who live a little bit away so I can ride to their house. And I can tell them on the school bus or when I see them at school, hey, listen, I'll come and I'll ride out to your house. I got a moped. They're like, really? I'm like, well, it's not as exciting as it sounds. So I made friends with people who I knew rode the bus that were within driving distance. And I was like, hey, they only live a few miles away. I can ride over and say hey. Because they're going to be playing outside too because their parents told them to get out of the house. So I did that. On a regular basis, I'd hop on my little dorky moped, I'd pedal it, get it cranked, and drive off to see somebody. And Rodney happened to be one of those people. We'll get back to Rodney. Rodney happened to be one of those people who lived probably realistically about 10 miles away-ish, I'm guessing. So it was a little decent drive. And I'd hop on my moped and I'd ride out to see Rodney. Well, Rodney was at the house. Rodney had an older brother named Jay. And they had an Apple II computer. Well, this is back before anybody really had decent computers at the house. Most people, if you were lucky, you had one of those Radio Shack Tandy deals, which is just like a dot matrix thing that you type in a whole bunch of codes to watch a little line on the screen go bloop, and that was it. An Apple was a different thing. An Apple did stuff, but Apples were extremely expensive back then. But Rodney's dad and mom believed in technology and buying the best equipment. And they bought this cool computer that actually played video games. This is back before video games were a thing that people could have, other than like Atari or Nintendo or Sega. This is before all of that. This is right after Atari, I guess. Anyway, back to the point. Rodney's brother Jay had bought a video game called Bard's Tale. Now, Bard's Tale was interesting. Bard's Tale was one of those that you type in words, and you had a little screen where you could see like a maze, and you'd walk through this maze and you'd do tasks, and you'd tell your character to do things, and he would do it. And it was fascinating. Like, it kept us engaged. And every day when I had to go home, I was like, I'll see you tomorrow. Like, I spent one summer, I think, going over to their house. If there's 30 days in a month, probably 28 days of the month I was at their house, playing video games with Rodney and Jay, playing Bard's Tale, or watching them play it, just being a part of it. But it also gave me a reason to ride that moped. Now here's one of the other side effects of riding that moped, is I started to make friends in the neighborhoods I was driving through, because I would see other kids that I knew. I saw a guy named Marty Hunter, a guy named Chris Goldsmith, who were skaters at the time. They had skateboards, and we got this fancy idea of hooking up rope with them on their skateboards, and we would drive through the neighborhoods, and I'd see if I could fling them off into a distance, or they'd try to mess with each other while they're skiing behind it. Listen, for such a dorky thing to drive, it actually became kind of cool. And I put a bunch of miles on this thing. Now, again, my stepdad's not really mechanically inclined, and at a certain point when things start going wrong, you just go, yeah, I don't know what to do. So, I don't know, at some point it stopped working correctly, and I just parked it. And if they paid $300, they paid too much for it. But I got every dollar that they paid out of it. I mean, I rode the crap out of that thing. And I would pass by friends who were getting their new cars, or their, not new, but new to them cars. And they're like, check out my new ride. I'm like, cool, man, that's awesome. I'll see you later. Yep. Handlebars of freedom. So, Rodney and I stayed friends. Somewhere in there, I got a car. He had to move away. He went to live in Chicago for a while, and would call me on the phone and be like, "Hey, you watching the game? Turn on WGN." Back then, we actually knew the names of the stations that we had, and for some reason, we got the WGN channel, which is out of Chicago. We picked up here in Florence, South Carolina, on like a regular antenna type deal. But we could also get cable. Like, we had regular cable back then. And he's like, turn on this channel, like I'm in this building. You can see when this guy hits a home run. Maybe it'll show this building. I'll wave. And I'm like, okay. And I'd look really close to see if I could see him, and I couldn't see him, but I tried. But anyway, Rodney moved away, and then he moved back, and he ended up graduating with us, and that was cool. He spent one summer with us at our house. Rodney's mom was like, I'll send some money for food. My mom was like, no, it's okay, I got it. She didn't realize that Rodney ate a ton of food. And stayed thin, like his metabolism was off the charts. But anyway, it was cool that he got to come home. Like, he lived in Palmdale for a while with his dad and out in California. But he ultimately moved back and graduated with us, which is cool, because like I had made other friends while he was away, Greg and Josh Treadaway, and like I introduced them. I was like, hey, listen, these are some guys I'm hanging around that we're all funny and we're fun and we like hanging out together, and maybe you will too. And it just worked out. And we stayed in touch. And Rodney's been one of those people that has just randomly popped up in my life at times when I least expected it. When I was in the Marine Corps, I was stationed out in California. he called me up out of the blue. Hey man, what you doing? And I'm like, I'm just hanging out. You know, what you got going on? Well, I'm about 20 minutes away in the area. I thought I'd drop by and say, hey, if you're okay with that. And I'm like, really? Okay. And then he drove up and was like, hey, you want to see LA? I know some stuff around here. I'm like, really? So he took me for a ride and showed me parts of LA. You know, he showed up at my house several times just out of the blue, called me, cell phones were in by then, and, you know, called me on the phone. Hey man, you home? I'm like, yeah, why? Oh, nothing, I was just in the area, thought I'd stop by. I'm like, how are you in the area? There's nothing here now. Like, his parents live 2 hours away. There's no reason for him to be here other than to stop by and say, hey. And I've always appreciated that about him. I've always appreciated just him showing up. And this past weekend was not an exception. He just showed up. Like, that's all I needed. I just wanted him to show up. And it wouldn't have mattered if he couldn't make it. He's just one of those people that's always been around and always been a part of my life. And ever since I was 12 years old, and I thought, you know, there's something to that. There's something to being there. There's something to participating in each other's life that matters. And it's not like we've done any grand gestures together. It's not like we've taken road trips together, any of that kind of crap. We've just always been there for conversation or to hang out. So, he couldn't make it for the whole time that we were at the lake. He obviously didn't make it for the podcast that we did last. He flew in Friday night after work. He was in Oklahoma working. He actually lived in New York City. He was working in Oklahoma. He was able to fly into Charlotte Friday evening, hang out with his folks there, and then rented a car and drove down to visit with us, spend the night Saturday, and then had to leave out by 9 a.m. on Sunday to go catch a flight to go back to Oklahoma to work. But again, I had no expectations. I just wanted to see him, and he showed up, and that's awesome. So, thank you, Rodney. Thank you for always showing up. It matters. And listen, there may be people in your life that shows up from time to time. Think about that. Think about their role in your life, whether you realize it or not, how much it matters. So, geez, this is the Stuff I Heard podcast, right? I ain't talking about anything I've heard. I'm slacking off, man. Listen, Bert Kreischer and Tom Segura have a first episode of Two Bears, One Cave. I started listening to it on the podcast app on my phone, and then I realized I wanted to watch it because they're silly together and they make funny facial expressions, and apparently at some point they have some girl in there that keeps serving them alcohol and food because it's one of the ongoing jokes they both have about each other being fat. Anyway, it's funny, it's hilarious. Go check it out. I think on YouTube you got to look under Your Mom's House podcast. It's a page called Your Mom's House, or you can just type in Two Bears, One Cave. Anyway, my wife and I got to go see Toy Story 4. It was really good. A lot of people were really emotional about it. I didn't exactly understand the emotional part. It was a good movie. Listen, I like Toy Story. I like everybody who's in it. I mean, they've been a franchise that's been popular for quite a long time, that we've watched all of them. And to think that they're done doing them, or possibly done doing them, is, you know, I guess that's the emotional part, but I thought it was a really, really good movie. So anyway, I'm going to wrap this up. We're at about 30 minutes. Tomorrow's back to the grindstone. Tomorrow's July 4th. Happy Independence Day. Yeah. God bless America. Y'all have a great day. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Please remember to rate, review, subscribe, and share with your friends. And if you want to be part of the podcast, reach out to me. Let me know. Let me know what's going on in your life. Let me know the people who show up in your life. Maybe that's something we can start talking about. Y'all take care now. Cue the cow. Bye.